Boys and girls, welcome back. This is Benjamin Bakhtar bringing you another F1 23 ranked online video. The races this week were Miami, Singapore, and Zandvoort. I don't know why, but it seems like these three races always come in a group, and this is like the 6th or 7th time they've come together as a group since the game launch. I don't know why Cody's isn't randomizing the tracks better, but it feels like every time there's a race at Miami, there's also a race at Singapore, and I really hate these tracks. Or I don't hate these tracks, I'm just terrible at these tracks. So I guess therefore I do hate these tracks. And once again, we're racing at a wet Miami. It was dry quali, and then we get into the race and it is wet, although the tires recommended were dry. So we're starting on the mediums. We actually qualified on pole here, and we didn't have any. Actually, no, I'm sorry. We did have force feedback. But 5 red lights and away we go. Not an amazing start. Look at the proximity arrows. They are all around us right now. So we're getting sandwiched, and I have to kind of go a little bit deep so I don't squeeze the guy on the inside. But I think we kind of make contact with the guy on the outside. So a bit unfortunate there, but we were caught in the middle of a bunch of cars. So we do make it out of there without any damage in P1. PGM Spartan up to P2 now. Smelt qualified in P2 is now fighting for P4. And yeah, even though we were on the dry tires, it wasn't exactly Inter's weather yet. And you can see right now with the traction, it's not really that great, and cars behind us, one guy into the wall and everybody else having some issues coming out of that long left-hander. So right now we are sitting 1.6 seconds in the lead, but the driver behind is on the soft tires, which I think at this point was probably the most optimal tire to be on. It will heat up faster and it will maintain temperature. So we are kind of just drifting around these corners here in 3rd and 4th gear, trying to find traction. And luckily for us, we don't make any track extensions, even though still not being penalized for that. Although Ricky Mario has a 3-second penalty from, I don't know what he would have gotten that from. Maybe contact? I'm not quite sure. I don't know. Have they patched track limits back in? I haven't done a race here in like a week and a half. But we come around the penultimate corner? No, 3rd to final corner before the end of the lap, and we are down to 1.3, back up to 1.5. So it does look like the soft tires are a little bit quicker, although Zamo could have been spamming a bit more battery than we were. So come around turn 1 now, and we are still in the lead here, although again the driver behind us on the softs is gaining time through the corners. But I think we are doing a little bit better on the throttle in corner exits, so we're still able to maintain this lead here a bit. Looks like Smelt still in P4. He's the only guy that I think will be threatening us for the win here, because he was qualified P2. And the driver who qualified P3, I think DNF'd on the first lap. So, and everybody else qualified quite a ways behind us. I think they were over a second behind us. Only the driver in P2 and P3 were within a second, I believe. So right now, 1.4 seconds to the guy in P2. And I was afraid that it was going to start to dry up really, really quickly here, and the softs would become the faster tire. But it did seem like the rain was going to be in the race until at least the medium tires wore out, because it looked like it wasn't supposed to stop raining until we made our first pit stop. So I went on the medium tires just in case the rain ended early. We could throw on the hards, and just in case the rain went a little bit longer, we can extend a bit. If we did start on the softs and the rain went until like lap 8 or lap 9, the soft tires would have been dead at that point. So we decided to go on the mediums, and it looks like it's serving us well. Driver in P2 starting to fall back a little bit now. I don't think we used much battery on that lap, and I think Zamo was using a bunch of battery. Now once he's out of battery, I think that artificial pace is gone. As you can see now, he is around 2 seconds. But as we come through sector 1 here, it looks like Zamo had a bit of a problem in the first few corners, and he DNF'd himself. Now at the end of lap number 8, a few drivers behind had already come into pit, so we decided to come in as well. Race engineer said about 5 more minutes 5 to 10 more minutes before the rain stops. So I figured we might as well throw on the softs, get them up to temperature, and once it actually is dry, the softs should be closer to optimal temperature. Now Ert decides to go out for one more lap. Bossy, who was in P3, decides to follow us into the pit lane here, and now everybody should be on the softs, and we are just gonna try and cut as much of this lead as we can. But that was pretty much it. Wasn't too difficult of a race. The first few laps that were probably the most difficult, and then just trying to navigate through the rain was difficult. But we come to the final lap now. We just set the fastest lap. Now at this point we were super low on battery, so I wasn't really able to use battery through this straight here in sector 1. We were only able to deploy in sectors 2 and sectors 3, so if I had enough battery, we probably would have been able to keep the fastest lap, but we weren't able to, just because you can see we only have about 10% now. We didn't have that much to begin with on the previous lap. But yeah, we were able to maintain 9 seconds to Ertz melt there. I think he lost a bit of time trying to do the overcut in the rain. Probably not the wisest move, but I mean, I think at that point he was too far back to really make a difference anyway. So, and everybody else, we started gapping right from the get-go. So this is one of those races where it really pays to qualify on pole. Whenever it's raining, you don't want to be stuck any lower than like P3, because all that, well, if you survive turn 1, it's going to be a bunch of battling in the midfield pack with guys who messed up qualifying, who are a little bit quicker and trying to move up the grid, and then other drivers who probably qualified a lot better than their race pace was, and will be slower in the race, and they start dropping back and they start fighting hard. But we qualified on pole and we maintained P1 throughout that entire race. So pretty boring race, but we only had 2 races this week, so I figured we'd just throw it up there anyway. And we managed to win with an 8-second gap. Now Ert stole the fastest lap right at the end there, but I will take the win over the fastest lap. So on to the next race. We were at Singapore, and in this race I actually lost force feedback in quali, but we still drove well enough to qualify P4. I think we were only about a 10th off of the driver in P3, and just maybe 3 or 4 tenths off the driver in P2. So I think if we had force feedback, we probably would have been on the front row of the starting grid, if not on pole. But yeah, unfortunately we're in P4 and had to pick the softs. I wanted to try and be as fast as I could at the beginning of the race here, see if we can make up some positions. The longer we get stuck behind slower traffic, the more difficult it will be to come back towards the end of the race. So starting on the softs, P3 on the softs as well, and then the first 2 guys on the mediums. Now we didn't get an amazing start there, although we do get cleanly through turn 1. Cezitar on our outside in turn 1 there, but no contact made. And we are in single file now. I was trying to get ahead of T93 here in front of us, but I didn't want to use too much battery, as I wasn't quite sure how we stacked up against everybody else, because we didn't have force feedback in qualifying. So using a little bit down the straight here, just kind of wanted to test the setups to see if I can kind of get an idea if these guys were low downforce or high downforce. I believe our setup is just 2 clicks lower than time trial setup, so whatever the time trial setup is, I believe it is 40 or 50 45, so I think this is 48 43 or 47 42. So I do want to try and test their straight line speed at the beginning of the race, just so we can kind of plan our overtakes a little bit better. But yeah, it's actually a pretty close race here. As you can see, even Fil de France in P5 still sticking pretty close to us on the softs, and it looks like Cezitar has dropped back to P6 on the medium. So yeah, Singapore, Zandvoort, not the greatest tracks to race at, because overtaking is really impossible. Not impossible, but it's just really difficult, and if you get stuck behind a slower car for like 2 or 3 laps, even if the guys in front are only like a half a second faster than you, it's really difficult to claw that time back. And the tire temps are a huge problem. So we skip ahead now to P3. Looks like T93 has dropped back a little bit. We're going to set ourselves up for an overtake here. Still have about 85% battery left. Using a little bit on this straight here to close up a little bit closer, try and make our overtake easier on the next DRS straight. Pole sitter has dropped down to P2 now, and the driver who qualified P2 is now in the lead. So coming to this right-hand turn, we're nice and close, only about 2.5 tenths behind this guy. We get DRS, have a bunch of battery to use. He goes to the inside here. We will stick to the outside, but we'll get the inside on the next corner. Squeeze him a little bit on the exit here, but it looked like we were pretty far ahead anyway. So we make the move stick, and we are up to P3, only 1.2 seconds behind these guys in front, but it's already lap 4, and the tires are starting to go already. So pit, I think our pit stop is scheduled for lap number 8. Tire temps on the rear at about 100 degrees, so the tires aren't that bad, but at this point the medium tires are starting to become a little bit faster than the soft tires, and because we were stuck behind T93 for the first few laps, and he was about 1.7 seconds behind by the time we made the overtake done, we just lost our opportunity to overtake on these tires. So now the plan is to just try and stick to these guys close enough until the pit stops and we come out on fresh tires, and hopefully we can either get an undercut or just towards the end of the race, once our tires are a little bit faster, we can try to overtake them then. But for now, we are just going to work on preserving our tires and trying to stay close. So not too far behind, 2.2 seconds to Caleb in P2, and then we come into our pit stop and we make a mistake. We slam into the wall. Luckily, no damage there, but we did lose probably like 3 or 4 seconds, I think. Slamming into the wall, coming to a complete stop, and then having to edge forward and let the CPU take over for us. So everybody else coming to pit behind us, but the last 2 guys are staying out, and I wasn't sure what this meant for us now. Dan VDV came out behind those 2 back markers, but he manages to get out in front of them really, really quick. Now, they were about 6 seconds ahead. They were really slow, though, and I was like, please, for the love of God, just let them be fast enough to the point where I don't catch up to them at the end of the lap. But you can see time is already coming down, 4.9 seconds to Cezitar now, and I wanted to try and get as close to the leaders as I could, but we did lose time slamming into the pit wall, and I think that kind of screwed us up a little bit. Now you can see we haven't even made it halfway through Sector 2 yet, and the gap to P4 is already at 3.3 seconds, 3.1, and we are just getting closer and closer by multiple tenths through every corner, and we come down to this back DRS straight, and we're already right behind them. So they've been fighting each other on this lap, slowing each other down, and it's just been too easy to catch up to them, and now we are right on their gearbox through this last sector. So I was hoping that they both jump into the pit lane right now and we won't lose any more time, as the gap to Dan is already quite a bit. So we have to slow down a whole bunch on these last few corners here as Bridges screws up the chicane there. He comes into the pits, but Cezitar decides to stay out, and we are already 9 seconds behind Dan VDV there. 9 seconds already. I think the gap was 5 seconds when we came out of the pit lane, 5 or 6 seconds when we came out of the pit lane, and we're already 9 seconds behind just because we caught up to these guys in the final sector. But we do have the better tires coming out of here, this corner, and he moves to the inside. We give him all the room in the world, and he still manages to hit us anyway. I know that it kind of gets narrow there as the road curves, but I feel like he had plenty of room there to get through or get through safely, and he still managed to touch us anyway. So we jump up to lap 13 now, and we did cut the gap down a little bit to Dan. Caleb pitted, I think, 2 laps later than we did, and he was about 7 seconds or so behind Dan, but he caught up to Dan really, really quickly, and now they've caught up to each other on track. Dan's starting to lose time. The mediums are starting to become a little bit quicker now. As I believe before we made that last cut, we were about 9 seconds behind, but it's as you can see now, it's 7 seconds, and he is just losing a bunch of time. Caleb's caught up to him. They're starting to fight, and just look at that. Look at that gap to the first two drivers. It's starting to come down. They're changing leads back and forth, and it's under 7 seconds now. It's 6.8, 6.9. We come through the next few corners down to 5.8 and 4.8, and then 4.5 seconds. So they are fighting really, really hard, and there are a bunch of corners in this next section of the track. And as they come down and through the bridge to come to the next DRS zone, and we round this corner, the yellow flag comes up. Dan is sitting on the side of the road, and he is without his front wing. So we managed to catch up to him. I don't know what happened. I didn't see it, and obviously in the replays you can only look at your car, so I didn't see what happened there. But they were fighting through, I don't know, the last 6 corners or so before the bridge section there. So I'm not sure who's really to blame, but now we only have a 3-second gap to Caleb. And if Dan has a missing front wing, at this point I was hoping that Caleb had a missing front wing as well. So the gap now 3 seconds, 2 laps left to go. And we will just jump to the final lap here. And we only managed to cut the lead down by 1/10. So whatever damage he does have, if he does have any damage, I don't believe it was quite enough. But he does have 2 lap fresher tires, and he is on the soft compound. So I believe his soft tires are still in pretty good condition. And I'm not even sure if he has damage yet or not. But yeah, this was actually a pretty fun race, even though there really wasn't much action on track. We kind of lost out right away, getting stuck behind the other soft runner and losing quite a bit of time to the first 2 guys. But we had to just try and stay as close as possible on older aging tires, and then once we pitted onto the harder compound of tires, just trying to hang on long enough to the point where our tires become a little bit faster than the softs. But yeah, these 2 guys in P1 and P2 were really, really quick. I don't really know if we would have been able to keep up had we had a decent qualifying, if our steering wheel hadn't shit out on us. But yeah, they were really quick in this race, and I don't think, even if with force feedback and quali and we managed to qualify well, I don't know if we would have been able to hang on anyway. So yeah, 2 rather boring races. The Miami race was really, really boring, and this one didn't have much action, but I actually did enjoy this one, and this little chase towards the end of the race here was really fun for me as well, even though ultimately we didn't end up winning. So that's it for this week, guys. Only 2 races. Yeah, like I said, the track selection really not all that great. Don't really enjoy these tracks, but we did manage to do well enough to get into the next promotion zone. Hopefully it is Sunday night, and not too many more races in ranked will be run, so we should be able to make it into Gold 1 for next week. So it's just been a while since I made a video, and even if it wasn't going to be a great video, I just wanted to put this out there anyway. So if you guys enjoyed it, feel free to leave a like, comment, or subscribe. Stay tuned for more. Remember to eat bok choy, and I'll see you guys in the next one.